Love was forbidden by the alien queen, until a human changed everything. The twin suns cast long, pale shadows across the spires and towers of the alien capital, a city built of crystal and metal, glowing faintly in the soft light. Silence dominated the streets, broken only by the hum of the strange vehicles gliding over the smooth ground. There was no laughter, no music, no signs of joy. Everything was perfect and everything was controlled. High in the center of the capital stood the palace of Queen Zelaris, ruler of Velith. Her throne room was vast, built of polished black stone, with intricate carvings that told the history of her people. She sat on her throne, tall and regal, her skin a pale silver that reflected the ambient light, her eyes dark and sharp, seeming to pierce into anyone who dared meet them. Her hands rested lightly on the arms of the throne, but the power she held was heavy. Her law was absolute. No Velithian may feel love, no Velithian may form emotional bonds. To do so was treason. For centuries, this law had kept the Velithians orderly and efficient. Their society was advanced beyond what most civilizations could imagine. Technology thrived, cities were immaculate, and their armies were unmatched. Emotions were seen as a weakness, a distraction that could destroy everything they had built. The queen had inherited this belief from her ancestors and had enforced it with precision. Love was forbidden and the people obeyed. Yet, even in this perfect world, cracks were beginning to show. A whisper here, a stolen glance there, small acts that went unnoticed by most but carried a hint of something forbidden. Velithians were curious, though they would never admit it openly. The queen noticed these subtle rebellions and crushed them before they could grow. It was during one of these quiet mornings that a new presence arrived on Velith. A human spacecraft, sleek and silver, landed in the designated landing area outside the capital. The humans had only recently discovered Velith, and now they sought to learn from the alien civilization. They came with curiosity and hope, but also with caution. The human diplomat sent to Velith was Ethan Carter, a man of average height with messy brown hair and warm, brown eyes. He was not a soldier, nor a scientist, but a mediator, chosen for his ability to communicate and understand. He stepped out of his ship, taking in the alien city with wide-eyed wonder. Ethan had studied the Velithians for months before arriving. He knew about their law-forbidding emotions, their strict society, and their queen. But nothing could prepare him for the reality of it, the silence, the perfect order, and the subtle tension in the air. "Welcome to Velith," said a Velithian officer, her voice calm and precise. Her name was Lyria. She was young for her rank, and her silver eyes were the first thing Ethan noticed. There was something different about her gaze, something that suggested she thought more than she let on. "Thank you," Ethan replied, bowing slightly. "It's beautiful here." Lyria tilted her head, studying him. "Beauty is subjective," she said. "Our focus is efficiency and order. You may find this world unusual." Ethan smiled. "I find order comforting, but I also like to see what lies beneath the surface." Lyria's eyes narrowed slightly, though she said nothing. She led him through the city, showing him the towers, the transport systems, and the research facilities. Everywhere Ethan looked, he saw perfection. Machines worked flawlessly, the streets were spotless, and Velithians moved with a grace that seemed almost unnatural. But it was in the smaller moments that Ethan noticed something strange. Two workers passing in the corridor glanced at each other for a heartbeat longer than necessary. A group of engineers whispered in a corner, their hands fluttering over each other's notes as if sharing something secret. Nothing overt, nothing that would break the law. But there was a spark of curiosity, of emotion, hidden beneath the rigid exterior. That evening, Ethan was brought before Queen Zelaris. The throne room was even more impressive than he had imagined. He stood before the throne, feeling the weight of the queen's gaze. "Human," the queen said, her voice low and commanding, "you are the first of your kind to enter my city. You come as a diplomat, yes. Yes, Your Majesty, Ethan replied. I come to learn from you, to understand your people, and to share knowledge of Earth. The Queen's eyes studied him, unblinking. And what do you know of love, human? She asked. Ethan hesitated. Love is a human emotion. It can make us strong and it can make us weak, but it is always a part of who we are. Zalaris's lips pressed together. Emotions are dangerous. They have no place in my society. Weakness has no place in my society. Love is forbidden and my people obey. Ethan nodded. I understand, Your Majesty, but perhaps some things thought to be weakness are actually strength. I have seen it on Earth. People care for each other, and in doing so they become braver, stronger, and more resilient. The Queen's eyes narrowed. Curious. You will be observed. I will see if your words have any effect. Know this, Velithians who disobey my law are punished severely. Yes, Your Majesty, Ethan said, bowing again. After the meeting, Lyria escorted him to the quarters where he would stay. You have courage, human, she said quietly. Few would speak so freely to the Queen. Ethan looked at her, sensing something in her voice. You sound like you agree with me. Lyria shook her head. I am loyal. I speak only what is permitted, but sometimes even loyalty cannot hide what is felt inside. That night, Ethan looked out over the city from his window. The glowing spires reflected in his eyes as he thought about the Queen's words. He understood the challenge before him. This was a society built on control, a civilization that had never known love or emotional freedom. And yet he sensed a small but undeniable spark in some of the people he had met, something waiting to awaken. Meanwhile, Lyria returned to her quarters, troubled. She had always followed the Queen's rules without question, but the human's words lingered in her mind. Could emotions truly be strength? Could something forbidden actually improve their society? She did not know, but she could not shake the feeling that something was changing inside her. The next day, the human was assigned to work with Lyria on a technological project, an initiative to improve the city's energy systems. It was meant to be purely functional, but for both of them, it was the beginning of something neither could fully understand. Ethan's presence was like a small ripple in the calm waters of Velith. He did not break the order immediately, but he planted a seed that, over time, might grow into something powerful. Love was forbidden here, yes. But even in the strictest rules, curiosity and emotion had a way of sneaking in quietly and changing everything. And so, on a world where love was forbidden, a human had arrived. Unaware of the storm he would stir, Ethan Carter began his mission, not just to learn from Velith, but perhaps, unknowingly, to teach them something they had never known. The alien city slept under its violet sky, the twin suns setting behind distant mountains. The Queen watched her subjects, her mind sharp and vigilant. But even she could not yet see the change that was coming. The next morning, the twin suns of Velith rose slowly over the violet horizon, casting their pale light across the city. Ethan Carter had slept fitfully, his mind still turning over the events of his first day. The alien world was unlike anything he had ever seen, and he was determined not just to observe, but to understand. Lyria arrived promptly to escort him to the research facility. Her silver eyes seemed sharper than usual, as if she were measuring not only his abilities, but his intentions. She did not speak much, but her presence was commanding, and Ethan found himself watching her more closely than he had anticipated. Today we begin work on the energy project, Lyria said, her voice steady. It is a critical system. Any mistakes could have consequences for the city. I understand, Ethan replied. I will do my best. They entered the research hall, a massive room filled with humming machines, glowing panels, and intricate devices Ethan could barely recognize. The Velithians moved with precise movements, adjusting instruments and monitoring readings. Everything was exact, efficient, and purposeful. Your humans' methods are different, Lyria said as she guided him to a workstation. They tend to focus on trial and error, experimenting in ways that seem reckless to us, but they often succeed. Ethan smiled. We do take risks, yes, but that is how we learn. Sometimes mistakes are the best teachers. Lyria paused, considering his words. Perhaps. Efficiency is valued above all here. Time and resources cannot be wasted on failure. And yet, sometimes creativity comes from trying things that might fail, Ethan said gently. Even in your world, Lyria, imagination can be stronger than rules. For a moment, she said nothing. Her eyes lingered on him, searching for hidden meaning. Then, with a small nod, she returned to her work. As the day progressed, Ethan and Lyria worked side by side, examining the energy systems and testing components. Ethan's curiosity led him to ask questions, sometimes simple, sometimes profound, about the Velithian way of life. Lyria answered politely, though she noticed he was probing deeper than any human diplomat had dared. You seem interested in more than just technology, Lyria observed. Why do you want to know so much about our society? Ethan paused, looking at her with his warm, steady gaze. Because people are more than their work. Civilization is built on its people, not just machines. I want to understand your hearts, even if your laws forbid you from exploring them. Lyria stiffened at the word hearts. Emotions were dangerous, forbidden. Yet she felt something stir inside her that she had never felt before, a strange mixture of curiosity, excitement, and fear. She quickly focused back on the panels before her, hiding her reaction. Throughout the day, Ethan's presence had an unusual effect on the other Velithians in the lab. Normally silent and reserved, they began exchanging glances and quiet smiles, subtle acts that were normally suppressed. Even small gestures of camaraderie became visible, a nod, a shared tool, a brief word of encouragement. Though no one dared break the law openly, the ripple of change was already spreading. During a break, Ethan and Lyria walked through the corridors of the facility. The walls were polished crystal, reflecting the light in ways that made the hallways seem endless. Your people are extraordinary, Ethan said. Everything is perfect, yet there is a feeling here, a tension. Something is being held back. Lyria's expression tightened. We are disciplined. Emotions interfere with duty. That is all. Ethan tilted his head. But what if emotions could help you? What if caring, even for one another, made you stronger instead of weaker? Lyria stopped walking, her eyes fixed on the distant city below through a transparent panel. I don't know. That is forbidden to think. Sometimes, Ethan said softly, the things we are told we cannot do are exactly the things we need most. Curiosity, compassion, even love, they make civilization stronger. Lyria felt a stirring she could not name. It was frightening and exhilarating. For the first time, she questioned the rules she had always followed. The law was clear. Love and emotional attachment were forbidden. Yet, the human standing beside her made her feel that perhaps the law had never told the whole truth. That evening, the queen summoned Lyria to the palace. Ethan was not called. The young officer walked through the grand corridors, her mind racing. She had always obeyed without question. Yet now, doubts and questions tangled inside her. You have been working closely with the human, Queen Zelaris said, her eyes cold and sharp. Tell me, has he influenced you in any way? Lyria hesitated, aware of the danger of her answer. I observe only, Your Majesty. I follow my duties faithfully. The queen's gaze did not waver. Observation can lead to imitation. Be cautious, Lyria. The human may appear harmless, but he brings ideas that could disrupt everything. Love, attachment, emotion, they are dangerous. Remember why my law exists. Yes, Your Majesty, Lyria said, though her mind was no longer certain. After her audience, she returned to her quarters, troubled. She had never felt conflicted before. She had never questioned the queen's decree. But now, watching Ethan's patience, his curiosity, and his kindness, she began to wonder, could emotions truly be strength? Could something forbidden actually improve their society? Meanwhile, Ethan continued his work, unaware of the Queen's scrutiny. He noticed the subtle changes in the lab. Velithians were no longer as silent or rigid. Small gestures of empathy and collaboration had begun to appear, sparked perhaps by his presence or his words. One day, while testing a new energy regulator, a component unexpectedly failed. The machine emitted a high-pitched alarm and sparks flew. The other Velithians froze, unsure how to react, but Ethan calmly approached. "Don't panic," he said, examining the device. "It's okay to fail sometimes. We learn from mistakes." Lyria hesitated, then stepped forward. Together, they repaired the device, working in synchrony. When the machine hummed steadily again, a quiet cheer went up from the team, small, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The first spark of collective emotion, hope, and pride in their work. Ethan smiled at Lyria. "See, when you trust each other, even a mistake becomes a lesson, not a disaster." She looked at him, her silver eyes reflecting both admiration and confusion. "Perhaps you are right," she whispered. As days passed, their partnership deepened. They learned from each other, Ethan teaching about human creativity, teamwork, and emotion, Lyria showing the precision, intelligence, and discipline of her people. And though no one could say it aloud, a subtle bond began to form between them. Friendship, trust, and admiration replaced the cold distance that had once defined Lyria's world. But the Queen watched. She noticed the changes, small gestures, lingering glances, laughter that was barely hidden. Suspicion burned in her mind. She did not yet understand the human's influence, but she knew it was dangerous. "Emotions have no place here," she muttered to herself, pacing in her chambers. "I will not allow my people to be corrupted by curiosity or weakness." And yet deep inside, a tiny spark of doubt began to grow. Could the Queen be wrong? Could emotions, even love, strengthen her people rather than weaken them? She dismissed the thought quickly. For now, vigilance was her only duty. Meanwhile, Ethan and Lyria continued their work. Their days were filled with tasks, experiments, and discoveries. But each moment together brought them closer, teaching them both that there was more to life than rules and laws. A new world was beginning to stir, not through force or conquest, but through understanding, compassion, and the quiet courage to question what had always been taken as truth. In the heart of the city, under the twin suns, a subtle revolution had begun. It was not fought with weapons or armies. It was fought with kindness, curiosity, and the courage to feel. And though the Queen had yet to recognize it, the first cracks in the walls of her perfect society were already forming. Love was forbidden on Velith. But for the first time, the seeds of change had been planted. And with a human by her side, Lyria felt a stirring she could no longer ignore, a feeling that would shape not just her life, but the fate of her entire civilization. Days turned into weeks, and the Velithian city continued to hum with its usual precision. But beneath the surface of perfect order, subtle changes were taking place. Small gestures of empathy, moments of shared laughter, and unspoken curiosity began to ripple through the people. And at the center of it all was Lyria. She had tried to ignore the strange sensations that stirred within her when she was around Ethan. His presence made her heart beat faster, his words lingered in her mind, and his gestures, so different from the rigid formality of Velithian interactions, made her feel something she had never experienced before, something forbidden. One morning, as they worked in the research facility, Ethan noticed her hesitation. They were analyzing an energy flow diagram and Lyria had paused, her eyes distant. "Is everything all right?" Ethan asked, leaning closer. Lyria shook her head, trying to focus. "I do not know. Something feels different. I cannot explain it." Ethan smiled gently. "Sometimes feelings are difficult to explain. That doesn't make them wrong. It just means you're learning something new." Lyria looked at him, searching his eyes. In that moment, she felt a spark of warmth that both frightened and thrilled her. She quickly returned to the diagram, pretending nothing had happened, but the sensation lingered. Over the next few days, she found herself thinking of Ethan constantly. When he was not around, she replayed their conversations in her mind, analyzing his words, his mannerisms, and even the way he smiled. She realized she was beginning to care about him more than she had ever cared for anyone, and that realization terrified her. The Velithians were taught from birth that emotions were dangerous. Love, attachment, empathy, they were all forbidden. To feel them was to risk everything, your career, your reputation, and even your life. Yet Lyria could not stop herself. The human had awakened something inside her, something she could no longer suppress. One evening, after a long day of testing energy regulators, Ethan and Lyria walked through the city. The twin suns were setting, casting long shadows across the crystal towers. The streets were quiet, save for the soft hum of hovering vehicles. "Do you ever wonder," Ethan said thoughtfully, "why your society fears emotions so much?" Lyria hesitated. "Emotions are unpredictable. They can cloud judgment, lead to mistakes, even rebellion. That is why the Queen forbids them." "But can they also bring strength?" Ethan asked. "Courage, creativity, loyalty, even happiness." Lyria stopped walking, her gaze fixed on the glowing city below. "I do not know, perhaps." Ethan turned to her, his eyes kind. "You are brave, Lyria. You ask questions, you observe, and you care. That is strength." Her chest tightened at his words. She wanted to speak, to tell him how she felt, but the thought of disobeying the Queen held her back. Still, the seed had been planted. In the days that followed, Lyria began to notice more than just her own feelings. The other Velithians in the lab were subtly changing too. They smiled at each other more often, offered help without being asked, and even exchanged quiet words of encouragement. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The human had brought something new to their world, a spark of emotion that could not be contained. One afternoon, while Ethan was explaining a new energy calibration, Lyria felt a sudden rush of emotion. The excitement of discovery, the joy of collaboration, and something deeper she could not name, all swirled inside her. Her hands shook slightly as she adjusted the controls, and Ethan noticed. "Are you all right?" he asked, concern in his voice. Lyria swallowed hard. Yes." "Just a bit startled." Ethan gave her a reassuring smile. "It's okay to feel startled sometimes. It means you are alive, experiencing the world." Her heart skipped a beat. Alive. That was exactly what she felt, alive in a way she had never known. She realized, with both fear and wonder, that she was beginning to experience emotions forbidden by her Queen, and she did not want them to go away. As the days passed, Lyria struggled to conceal her feelings. She became more aware of Ethan's presence, the sound of his voice, the way he moved, and even the small gestures he made for others. She found herself longing to be near him, to hear his thoughts, to share moments beyond work. Each stolen glance, each shared smile made her feel more human and more alien all at once. But the Queen was not blind. Zalaris noticed the subtle changes in her people. Reports came in of slight disruptions in the lab, quiet moments of camaraderie, and gestures that hinted at emotion. The Queen's eyes narrowed. "Lyria," she summoned one morning, "you are working closely with the human. Tell me, have you allowed yourself to feel anything?" "To question the law," Lyria trembled but bowed. "I observe only, your majesty. I follow my duties faithfully." The Queen's gaze was piercing. "Observation can lead to imitation. Do not be fooled by the human's charm. He is not Velithian. He does not understand our society. To allow him to influence you is to risk everything." Lyria's chest tightened. She wanted to protest, to tell the Queen that emotions could be strength, but she knew the danger. She bowed deeply. "Yes, your majesty." After her audience, she returned to her quarters, her mind racing. She could not deny the feelings growing inside her. The human had awakened something powerful, something she had never thought possible. She realized she was falling for him, even as fear and duty warred within her. Meanwhile, Ethan noticed the subtle tension in her behavior. She was distracted at times, lost in thought, and her responses carried a new depth he had not seen before. He suspected that something had changed, but he did not push. He knew that trust and patience were the keys to understanding the Velithian heart. One evening, while reviewing data in the lab, a sudden emergency occurred. A critical energy regulator malfunctioned, threatening to shut down a portion of the city's power grid. Panic rippled through the team, but Ethan remained calm. "Focus," he said firmly. "We can solve this if we work together." Lyria's hands flew over the controls, her mind racing. She worked alongside Ethan, their movements synchronized. As they repaired the regulator, she felt a surge of exhilaration and pride. For the first time, she realized that emotion, the fear, the excitement, the care for others, was helping her succeed. When the system stabilized, a quiet cheer went up from the team. Lyria looked at Ethan, and for a moment, words were unnecessary. The bond between them was clear, unspoken, but undeniable. That night, Lyria could not sleep. She stared out at the glowing city, her heart full of questions and emotions she had never known. She realized that she had changed, and there was no turning back. The human had awakened her heart, and with it, a new perspective on life, duty, and even love. In the following days, their partnership grew stronger. Ethan taught her about human emotions, joy, curiosity, compassion, and courage. Lyria shared the Velithian way of life, discipline, intelligence, and precision. Together, they discovered that combining their strengths created results neither could achieve alone. But the Queen's suspicion grew. She noticed the subtle changes in her people, the small acts of kindness, and the increasing trust between Lyria and the human. Zalaris's eyes, usually sharp and unwavering, reflected a new emotion: doubt. Could the human be right? Could emotions, even forbidden ones, actually strengthen her society? For now the Queen remained silent, watching, waiting. But deep inside, the seeds of change were sprouting. Lyria's heart had awakened, and with it, the potential to transform Velith in ways the Queen had never imagined. Love was still forbidden. The law had not changed. But for the first time, the possibility that it could be different had entered the minds and hearts of those who dared to feel. And with a human by her side, Lyria realized that the journey ahead would be both dangerous and extraordinary. The city of Velith shimmered under the light of the twin suns, the streets quiet, almost serene. But beneath the calm, tension simmered. The Queen had begun to notice changes she could not ignore. Small gestures of camaraderie, moments of laughter, and subtle acts of kindness had begun to spread among her people. And at the center of it all was the human, Ethan Carter, and the young Velithian officer, Lyria. Queen Zalaris summoned her advisors to the palace council chamber. They gathered around a long, polished black table, their silver eyes reflecting the faint glow of the room. "Report," the Queen demanded. One of her senior advisors, Kale, spoke carefully. "Your Majesty, the presence of the human has had a notable effect. Velithians under his influence display minor emotional expressions, unusual gestures of friendship, cooperation beyond duty, and in some cases, empathy." The Queen's gaze sharpened. "This is unacceptable. Emotions weaken discipline and loyalty. Have you identified the source?" Kale bowed. "It appears centered around Officer Lyria. She is working closely with the human on the energy project." Zalaris's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then she must be observed closely. The human must be tested." The Queen called for Ethan to be brought before her. He entered the throne room with calm confidence, his steps measured and deliberate. The Queen's eyes swept over him, sharp and assessing. "Human," she said, her voice cold. "You claim to be a diplomat, yet your presence has already influenced my people. Their loyalty and discipline are shifting. Why should I not consider you a threat?" Ethan bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty, I mean no harm. I came to understand your people and to share knowledge. But if influence has occurred, It is because I respect them and because they respond to kindness and trust." The queen studied him, her expression unreadable. "Your methods are dangerous. Velithians are trained to suppress emotion for a reason. They cannot withstand the chaos you bring." "Respectfully," Ethan replied, "what you see as chaos may be opportunity. Emotions can inspire courage, creativity, and loyalty. They can strengthen your society in ways you might not have considered." The queen's gaze narrowed. "Words are easy, actions are not. You claim to bring strength, yet the law is clear. Love and attachment are forbidden. You will be tested." Ethan nodded. "I understand, Your Majesty. I will face your challenge without fear." Lyria watched from the side, her heart pounding. She knew what the queen's challenge meant. The entire experiment, their work, their bond, would be scrutinized. If they failed, punishment could follow. Yet she could not deny the truth growing in her heart. She cared deeply for Ethan, and she would not betray that feeling. The queen's test began the following day. She ordered Ethan and Lyria to present a plan for improving the city's energy network to the Council of Velith. The council was known for its strict adherence to rules and efficiency, and they were skeptical of anything that deviated from tradition. Ethan approached the task with calm determination. "We need to design a system that balances efficiency with adaptability," he explained to Lyria. "And we need to show them that collaboration, trust, understanding, even care for others enhances results." Lyria nodded. She felt the weight of her society's expectations pressing down on her, but Ethan's confidence gave her courage. Together, they refined their design, combining Velithian precision with human creativity. When the day of the presentation arrived, the council chamber was tense. Velithians filed into the hall silently, their expressions neutral, their movements precise. The air was charged with anticipation. The queen sat at the head of the chamber, her piercing eyes fixed on them. Ethan began the presentation, speaking clearly and confidently. "Esteemed council members, our goal is not just to improve the energy system. It is to strengthen the entire city by combining precision, discipline, and collaboration. By valuing both efficiency and care for one another, we can create a system that is resilient, innovative, and sustainable." He guided the council through the plan, demonstrating how teamwork, trust, and communication could prevent errors, improve efficiency, and reduce risks. Lyria assisted, showing the Velithian calculations and technical expertise that complemented Ethan's ideas. As they presented, a subtle change began to occur among the council members. Some exchanged quiet glances, nodding in understanding. Others whispered softly, a rare act in a society where silence was standard. For the first time, the council saw the potential of combining emotion with discipline, but not all were convinced. One senior member, Rhinal, spoke sharply. "These methods introduce unnecessary variables. Trust and emotion have no place in our calculations. Discipline alone ensures success." Ethan met his gaze calmly. "Discipline ensures execution, yes. But collaboration and empathy improve outcomes beyond what rules alone can achieve. A society that trusts and values its people is stronger than one that fears them." Lyria felt her pulse quicken. She knew the truth in his words. The human had shown her that emotions were not weakness, they were strength. And now, before the council, she would stand with him despite the risk. Taking a deep breath, she addressed the council. "I have witnessed these effects firsthand. When we trust each other, when we care for each other, our work improves. Our calculations are more precise, our responses quicker, and our solutions more effective. This is not chaos, it is evolution." A silence filled the chamber. The queen's gaze was fixed on her, sharp and assessing. Lyria's heart pounded, but she held her ground. She was no longer the obedient officer who followed rules without question. She was a Velithian who had begun to understand the power of emotion, and she would not deny it. The council debated, voices low and tense. Some were convinced by the evidence and demonstrations. Others resisted, clinging to tradition, but the seed of change had been planted. The influence of the human and the courage of one young officer were breaking through centuries of rigid law. The Queen finally spoke, her voice carrying the weight of authority. The results are clear. Your methods show promise, but your approach challenges the law. You human have influenced my people. You Lyria have allowed this influence to take root. You are both under my observation. Any further transgressions will be met with consequences. Ethan bowed. We understand, Your Majesty. But we hope you see that the potential benefits outweigh the risks. Change is not weakness. It is strength when guided wisely. The Queen's expression was unreadable. She did not respond immediately, but in the depths of her mind, doubt and curiosity stirred. Could the human be right? Could emotions, even love, enhance the strength of her people rather than diminish it? In the days that followed, Lyria and Ethan continued their work. Their partnership grew stronger, their bond deeper. Lyria felt the weight of her feelings more keenly, but she no longer feared them. She had discovered that emotion could be a guide, a strength, and a source of courage. Other Velithians began to notice the subtle changes as well. Cooperation, empathy, and shared purpose spread quietly through the labs and workspaces. The city itself seemed to hum with a new energy, a vitality born not just from technology, but from connection. Yet the Queen remained vigilant. She summoned Lyria frequently, questioning her about her loyalty and her actions. Each time, Lyria navigated the conversation carefully, acknowledging duty while secretly harboring her growing feelings for Ethan. She had to be careful, but she also knew that what she felt was real and important. One evening, while Ethan and Lyria were reviewing the energy project, he noticed the tension in her posture. "You are worried," he said gently. "I must be careful," Lyria admitted. "The Queen watches us closely. One mistake and everything we have achieved could be undone." Ethan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I understand. But remember, courage does not mean ignoring fear. It means facing it with strength. You are stronger than you realize." Lyria looked into his eyes, and for a moment the world seemed to shrink to just the two of them. Her heart swelled with emotion, but she drew a deep breath and returned to the task at hand. The challenge had not ended. The Queen's scrutiny, the Council's debate, and the tension in the city were all reminders that change was never easy. But for the first time, Lyria felt hope. She felt that her people could embrace more than just discipline, that they could embrace each other, their own hearts, and the possibility of something greater. Love was still forbidden. The Queen had not yet yielded. But the bonds that had begun in quiet moments, through trust and courage, were growing stronger. And with the human by her side, Lyria was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For the first time, the Velithians glimpsed a future where strength came not only from law and order, but from the heart. The twin sons of Velith rose slowly, casting long violet shadows over the crystal towers of the capital. The city appeared as perfect as ever, but beneath the calm, something was shifting. Change had begun quietly, through the subtle acts of connection, trust, and care sparked by one human and one young officer. Now that change was reaching a point of no return. Queen Zelaris sat in her private chambers, reviewing reports from across the city. She noted the unusual behaviors, workers sharing tools freely, engineers laughing quietly as they solved problems together, and officers offering encouragement instead of strict commands. All of these small acts had begun to combine into something larger. "The human's influence grows," she muttered, her voice tight. "I must confront it directly." She summoned Ethan and Lyria to the throne room. The halls were quiet as they approached, every step echoing against polished crystal. The Queen's presence was commanding, as always, but there was a tension in the air she could not hide. "Human," she began, her tone measured but sharp, "and Officer Lyria, you have continued to influence my people. Discipline falters, order is challenged, and my laws are questioned. Explain yourselves." Ethan bowed respectfully. Your Majesty, we only acted with honesty and respect. Our goal has always been to help, to demonstrate that caring for one another can strengthen your society. The Queen's eyes narrowed. Caring is forbidden. Love is forbidden. Yet I see changes in my people. Are you claiming that what I forbid is necessary? I am not claiming, Your Majesty, Ethan said, his voice calm. I am showing it. A society that trusts and supports its people is stronger than one ruled only by fear and order. Emotion is not weakness. It is power. Lyria stepped forward, her silver eyes shining with conviction. Your Majesty, I have seen it myself. When we care for each other, when we trust and support one another, we achieve things we could never accomplish alone. We are stronger, braver, and more capable than before. The Queen's gaze swept across the chamber. She saw the faces of her people gathered to observe the meeting, officers, scientists, and workers alike. Many of them nodded subtly, their expressions showing the quiet truth Lyria had spoken. Xylaris's hands clenched at her sides. She had built her society on control, on fear of weakness, yet here was evidence that strength had grown from something she had forbidden. Could she admit it? Could she change centuries of law? A long silence fell over the chamber. Then, quietly, the Queen spoke. You claim that emotion can be strength. Prove it. Ethan and Lyria exchanged a glance. They had already demonstrated it through their work, through collaboration and problem-solving, but now the Queen demanded a more visible sign. The city faces an energy shortage, Lyria said. The network is near maximum capacity and a failure could affect thousands. We propose a new system that combines efficiency, precision, and human collaboration. The Queen's brow furrowed. Explain. Ethan stepped forward. The current system relies solely on rules and calculations. It does not allow for flexibility, adaptation, or teamwork beyond assigned roles. Our system encourages communication, mutual support, and quick problem-solving when unexpected issues arise. We can prevent outages, improve safety, and even increase energy output, Lyria added, and we can implement it immediately. My team is ready, but we need permission to act without interference. Xylaris's mind raced. Every instinct told her to refuse. Her laws, her authority, the centuries of Velithian discipline, all demanded obedience. Yet every instinct told her something else. The success of this plan depended on trust, courage, and a willingness to embrace what she had always forbidden. Finally, after a long moment, she spoke. Very well, you may proceed, but know this: failure will not be tolerated. Ethan and Lyria bowed. Thank you, Your Majesty, Ethan said. We will not fail. The project began immediately. Teams worked together, combining the precision of the Velithians with the flexibility of human methods. Mistakes were discussed openly, solutions shared, and new ideas embraced. For the first time, the city was alive not just with technology, but with collaboration and emotion. As the days passed, the energy system stabilized and improved. Outages were prevented, and efficiency increased. The workers cheered quietly at each success, their eyes bright with pride and excitement. For the first time in centuries, the city of Velith experienced joy, hope, and trust as part of its daily life. The Queen observed from her chambers, her mind struggling to reconcile what she had forbidden with what she now saw. She saw officers hugging in relief after solving a problem, engineers laughing as they found creative solutions, and even Lyria and Ethan exchanging quiet, unspoken gestures of trust. Could she continue to deny the truth? One evening, she summoned Lyria privately. You have changed, Xylaris said softly, and I see now that perhaps I have been wrong. Love, emotion, they may indeed bring strength. Lyria bowed deeply. Your Majesty, it is not too late. Our society can embrace both discipline and emotion. We can be stronger together. The Queen studied her young officer, her expression unreadable. Then slowly she nodded. Perhaps it is time to consider a new law, a new way forward. Word spread throughout the city. The Queen issued a new decree, allowing for trust, compassion, and even love among her people. While discipline and duty remained central to Velithian life, emotion was no longer forbidden. The citizens were free to feel, to connect, and to care for one another openly. Lyria and Ethan became symbols of the change. Their partnership, their courage, and their willingness to challenge the old ways inspired others. Love, once forbidden, was now recognized as a source of strength. The city transformed. Technology continued to advance, but now it was paired with creativity, empathy, and collaboration. Officers led with understanding, scientists shared discoveries openly, and workers supported one another. Velith had become not only efficient and precise but also vibrant, alive, and united. In the palace, the queen watched the city with a quiet sense of wonder. She had feared the change, yet now she understood it. Strength did not come solely from control. It came from the heart, from courage, and from the willingness to trust. One evening, Lyria and Ethan stood on a balcony overlooking the glowing city. The twin suns had set, leaving the sky painted in violet and silver. "We did it," Lyria said softly. Ethan smiled. "No, you did it. You had the courage to see the truth and to act on it. I only helped you find the path." Lyria looked at him, her silver eyes shining. "And you awakened something in me I never knew existed. I will always be grateful." He took her hand gently. "And I will always be proud of what you've accomplished. Together, we've changed the world." Below them, the city glowed with life. Velithians worked, laughed, and shared moments of joy. The queen had recognized the strength in emotion, and her society was stronger than it had ever been. For the first time in centuries, love was no longer forbidden. It was celebrated. Connection and compassion had become part of the foundation of Velithian life. The human had arrived as a visitor, but he had left as a teacher, a guide, and a friend. And as the twin suns rose again over the horizon, the city of Velith stood united, disciplined, advanced, and alive, ready to embrace a future where strength came not just from law, but from the heart.